Hi, my name is Argus Eliam, and I am going to talk today about my near-death experiences and some other spiritual experiences I've had over the course of my life. When I was 5, um, had the near-death experience where it started out. I was just playing in our living room and running around playing with my toys, and I did notice that I had this throbbing headache happening, and it was just kind of slowly getting worse and worse, and then it was pretty unbearable. I'm crying and screaming, basically, and my mother was like, "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" And I couldn't even talk. I just said it hurt so much. And they checked my temperature, and my temperature was like 105. So they said, "We need to get you to the hospital." And I think my uncle was home, my father was at work, so he wrapped me in a blanket, and we got in the car and we rushed off to the nearest hospital, and got into the emergency room. And at that point, it was just mayhem. And I was just kind of out of it, but still conscious. But I remember there was just a lot of commotion of them having to do what's called a spinal tap, which is a really painful, traumatic procedure. And also they plunged me into an ice bath to get my temperature down. And they determined that I had spinal meningitis, which is a very serious condition and life-threatening. So I ended up kind of losing consciousness. I was in and out, but my fever was so high that I was pretty what they would call delirious. And I remember they were trying to keep me calm. And I think I finally passed out at one point. For 2 days, I was in what they would call a coma, in and out of consciousness. And at that time, from my perspective, I don't remember a lot, but what I do remember is not being in my body, but being in a space that there's no details. It was more just like this space of light. And I believe it was my same light being friends that were there with me at the time. And it was kind of like a little reunion. And they were just kind of explaining to me that I was not in my body. My body was on Earth, but they were just telepathically, again, communicating to me that it was okay. Basically, I had a soul contract, and I didn't quite understand. A part of me did understand, of course, my soul self did, that it was in my contract that we had agreed ahead of time that I would have this period where this would happen. And the reason being, it was what's called an opt-out. And so it was sort of a check-in if I wanted to continue my earthly life. And this doesn't happen with all people who incarnate, but in my particular case, this was something that had happened. And they asked, if I wanted to, from this point, go back and continue my earthly existence and my whatever contract I had, or opt out and continue on. And I remember there was a period of sort of me thinking about it. And in this space with these beings, they were so benevolent. And the feeling is just so not like anything we experience here. It was just peace, love, and but I did remember that I wanted to go back with my parents, and I decided to to return and to continue the adventure of my life. So so after a couple of days, I did come out of it, and I remember the experience, but I feel like it might have been blocked from my memory for a while. And I think I might have mentioned it to my parents about being somewhere else and light beings, and they were like, "Oh, that's a lovely dream, that's wonderful." But I don't know if they really believe me. But I feel like I was altered in some way. Um, I was only 5, so um, I do feel like that my connection that I had with these beings and with the spirit world previously might have been opened a little bit more as far as my connection, psychic abilities, sensitivity, that sort of thing. And I do remember being in, it was probably kindergarten, with the group, and sitting there and being able to experience and see things that were there and other beings that were not physically there. And it was fairly clear. Again, these beings were, it was like they were almost maybe a holographic projection sort of thing, not physically real, but very, very real. And there was a Native American person I remember quite a bit that would come, and while I was sitting in class, we would, what I'd call journey, meaning that I would still be there physically present, but maybe like teachers would call it daydreaming, but it was like a very vivid experience, a waking dream, maybe. So, and we would travel and go to these different realms, and then I would come back. So this sort of thing happened after this experience. So I think that I might have been more open. Maybe my brain chemistry was altered or something happened to activate that within my consciousness. There are people who are working with consciousness expansion, meditation, this sort of thing. There are experiences to where we see that it's not as solid, that reality is more malleable than we might have originally thought. I had an experience quite a few years back where I feel like reality did a shift sort of thing with me, and I was dropping off a friend at the airport, and I called a friend from there before I left, and this is a good friend. We would talk about a lot of spiritual experiences, that sort of thing. And I think we were discussing the Sedona Method, which is a method of perception changing, consciousness changing, amongst other things. And I was driving back from the airport. I was on the roadway heading back home. Traffic was kind of on and off, and I was doing a lot of stopping and starting, and it was right before this stoplight, right before my turn. And without any sort of warning, unsolicited, it was kind of like the reality that we usually experience, what I was experiencing, kind of shifted suddenly. And it was sort of like, again, it's a hard thing to describe in words, but like if you took cellophane or some sort of foggy covering that might have been on your windshield and just took it off, and all of a sudden you're viewing things very clearly. So suddenly I was having normal perception, but there was also the perception of being in what I would call an expanded space of consciousness, where I was not in my body, but I was also in my body at the same time. So it was very sort of dichotomy to have this experience. It consciously, my conscious mind was trying to figure it out. But the interesting thing that happened was this amazing synchronicity where I looked at the license plate of the car in front of me, and it was a vanity plate, and it just said the word Sedona. And so this was quite a crazy synchronicity, coincidence, since I was just talking about the Sedona Method with my friend not long before that. So for me, this was just some sort of reality bending experience Um, and this went on for probably 2 days, where I was in this other perception of consciousness, and I was also in my body. Um, and it was very similar. The way I explained it before to someone was, if you're in an airplane and you're flying above, and you have a whole different perspective of things from that vantage point. And also you're in your body, so you're on the ground and you're in the air at the same time. But the thing I do remember that was pretty strong was this feeling of this expanded consciousness was being in a complete space of joy, and there was no fear. And it was just very, I would call it clear and expansive feeling. And also from that perspective, was feeling very just in awe, and feeling that all Earth experiences from that perspective should be cherished in a way, because they are experiences that we need to go through. And that would probably speak to what you were talking about maybe having illness or having some sort of physical difficulty, to overcome or to be with. But from that perspective, that joyful being was just very grateful and feeling cherished about these Earth experiences. I did have a very specific experience with manifesting, and I was doing journaling a while back with the artist way, which is because I am an artist. So I was utilizing this book called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. Still a very popular book. And part of the practice for that was doing what's called morning pages. So it's basically journaling 3 pages a day. And but what would happen during this journaling process, which was pretty much stream of consciousness, I would shift into what I call maybe expanded consciousness or higher self, and I would get messages and visions while I was writing. So in this particular time, I was writing, and while I was writing, I kept seeing this image in my mind's eye of these rolling hills of green and beautiful otherworldly place with blue sky, and it was just not really earthly, but it was very otherworldly. And in particular, there was this gold glow that was happening, where everything was glowing in gold. And I posed the question in my mind, what is this? Like, what am I seeing? And the answer came back to me that this was mana, and that this was the energy or precursor of things prior to them becoming in physical form. So I thought that was interesting, and I continued my writing. And afterwards, I had never heard the word mana, so I looked it up in the dictionary, and I saw there were 2 spellings. So there was M-A-N-N-A, which, if you go back to the Bible or biblical history, was the continued giving gift of sustenance as they were crossing the desert. Moses was crossing the desert, and that's explained in the in the definition. And then the other spelling was M-A-N-A, which is Polynesian for the word primal force. So they were sort of related. So I just thought that was interesting. So I started to focus on that. And I went out into town for a walk, and I came up with this little chant for myself. And I just said, mana within, mana without, mana, mana all about. And I did this mantra as I was walking. And then I decided to try to manifest some money. So as I'm walking, I was doing my chant, mono within, mono without, mono mahal about. I thought, I want to just manifest $5. And that's what I put out there. So I continued to walk. I was walking down the street doing my chant, and this was just maybe a few minutes after I noticed something on the ground, and it was a $5 bill right there. So it was such a, I was kind of blown away. I mean, just it was sort of surprising. It was unexpected, but I felt, to me, it was a demonstration of that, whatever I was experiencing, and the idea that everything is energy and vibration, and just from doing that intention that could happen. Thank you, Vivian, for letting me share my varied stories on your podcast here, and I am so appreciative and really hope that your audience did glean some insights and information from my sharing. That would be wonderful.